Shalom guys, it's Joel Sanchez here with you. In the last video that I did about, that was titled Hear Ye, and where I dealt with 5 areas why the Hebrew roots movement has become irrelevant, it caused kind of a firestorm. And so one of the suggestions that I was given was I needed to give solutions, because all I did was point out things that aren't correct. So this video is actually going to look at some simple solutions. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, just like the other video was an exhaustive list of the problems that we're having in the movement. But as I begin here, I like one of the comments that Matthew Vanderels put when someone was actually saying I didn't offer solutions, and he brought up a great point by saying, you know, the first thing, and when a person goes to an AA meeting, is they say, hello, my name is John Doe and I'm an alcoholic. So I think that's where we're at. We need to recognize these things and then build from there. So without further ado, here's my list. So the first thing that I mentioned, a problem that we were having that was causing irrelevancy in the movement, in the Hebrew roots movement, is a lack of responsibility. And so the solution that I propose to this can actually be found in Acts chapter 17 verse 26. You've probably all read over that and had no idea what that scripture means. I'm not going to read it, and I'll leave the task to you. But in other words, after you read it, it basically is saying that Yahweh created people before He created places. So what does that mean? In a nutshell, it means that Yahweh looked down throughout history at the condition of our nation before He decided who to create. So that actually puts a huge responsibility on you and I to do our part, because we were created for such a time as this to actually carry out the purposes and the plan of Yahweh in the earth in our day and age. Okay? This is why we can no longer throw our responsibility off on other leaders and other individuals within the movement. Every person has to step up to the plate and begin to do their part. So we have to understand that we're essential, and our contribution is essential in the plan of Yahweh. And what a lot of people are failing to realize is that when we don't do our part, that in turn will, in the end, when we stand before Yeshua at the great white judgment throne, that's going to in turn become a judgment against us. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, see, there's going to be a generation, there's going to be people, believers, who actually rise up and begin to walk as the Creator has told them to walk. They're going to walk into the promises and the purposes of what is written in Scripture. Just as Joshua's generation, they went into the land. They actually redeemed a failure that Moshe and his generation gave them. So Joshua and his generation redeemed that failure, but there's a catch with that. That failure in Moshe's generation, in turn, because someone actually came up and the next generation redeemed it, it in turn becomes a double-edged sword for Moshe's generation, because it's going to turn into judgment, because they were offered the same thing, but they chose as individuals and as a group, as a body, as a nation, to not walk into what Yahweh had promised them and had given them. So the same is with us. This is why we can't throw our responsibility off on other leaders and other individuals in the movement. I also mentioned that part of the reason was we didn't have any responsibility was because of the lack of vision and purpose. And I don't have a lot of time to go into this. I touch on this within the teen camps, but basically vision and purpose is on an individual basis. What do I mean by that? Well, your vision, my purpose, your purpose is unique and exclusive to each and every person. It's like our thumbprints. There's over 7 billion people in the world right now, and every individual born on this earth has a different thumbprint. No one thumbprint is identical. It's the same way with vision and purpose. Your vision, it cannot be identical to mine. It cannot be the same as mine. Your purpose cannot be the same as mine. Why? Because Yahweh is very creative. He doesn't create robots. He creates stones. He doesn't create bricks. Okay? He creates living stones. So in other words, it's up to each and every individual to find her purpose and their place in the kingdom, grab hold of that vision and purpose, and begin to walk that out. And once we begin to do that, we stop throwing our responsibility off on someone else, and we begin to build the kingdom, and we begin to cancel out all the negative things that's going on within the world. Now, the second point that we had talked about in the prior video was the lack of deliverance from offense, bitterness, rejection, and insecurity. And a friend of mine also had some thoughts about this particular point, and I'd like to share those and also share what my thoughts are. But my friend pointed out that the solution is, first, we have to love ourselves. We have many people in our movement who have no clue how to love, much less even love themselves. And we can't get fully delivered from something, or from spirits we have, or fully delivered from offense, rejection, insecurity, all of those things, unless we first love ourselves, or we have to learn to love ourselves. And once we do that, see, this also plays into the responsibility aspect. Once we learn how to do that, once we begin to love ourselves, then we can actually see our place and our role in the kingdom, and just how important we are to the plans and the purposes of Yahweh in the earth in the days that we're living in. So the first step in getting fully delivered is loving yourself. And this is a side note, just to talk about my past. In high school and college, I used to be a hardcore womanizer. I was full of spirits, just basically fornication and all kind of stuff, that all the stuff that goes with that. And I'm not saying that this will work for everybody, but what worked for me was I came to a point, in order to get delivered, to fully get delivered from those spirits, I basically came to a point where I literally starved those spirits to death, if you will. Now, how did I do that? Well, I went 3.5 years without even talking to a female. Not that I didn't say hello or whatever, but what I mean is, in a relationship, I went 3.5 years as a single man, only focused on God and His Word. And during that time, I did a lot of praying and fasting, and I really was seeking the kingdom. And because of that, I was delivered. I starved those spirits to death. They had to go feed on someone else. So those are two, solutions dealing with the first 2 points. Then the third point that I made was we weren't doing the weightier matters of Torah. So here's my solution to that. It's time that we stop being internet rabbis and we stop trying to be, Facebook keyboard warriors. And it's time that we get out from behind, the four walls of our buildings, of our fellowships, communities, kahilas, whatever, name we're calling ourselves. It's time that we get out, get in the trenches, get out on the front lines where the real war is at, and begin to get our hands dirty. Because it's actually outside where sick people and hurting people are at. It's outside where ministry is done. This is something really interesting. Go do this search. How many people did Yeshua heal in the synagogue? I'll leave that up to you. Versus how many people did he heal outside the synagogue? See, there's a principle there. There's a pattern. There's something to think about. Here's another thought that I came up with. Just talking to someone, just communicating with someone will totally make, a difference in their lives. Because it'll show people that someone actually cares about them. Someone's actually willing to take the time to listen to them and to hear their problems and to, trust me, it will make the difference in the world, because we live in a day and age where the love of many has grown cold, and we're only focused on ourselves. We're only focused on, what can we gain? What can I get out of this? And when people just do a little bit extra for someone, it's as if they've done this huge, great thing, and it just really impacts, the lives of other people. So communication is a solution in doing the weightier matters of Torah. Extending mercy to one another is another way of doing the weightier matters of Torah. And that means stop devouring one another with our words. Let's demonstrate mercy through our actions. Let's help others with and through our actions. Another point is that my friend brought up is that about Joshua crossing the Jordan. See, we need to stop depending on others or our leaders to assume the responsibility that has been given to each one of us as individuals. See, it's as if Joshua, when he was getting ready to cross the Jordan, it's as if the 12 leaders of the tribes and individuals, they all had their stones. This is the point my friend was bringing up. They had their stones, and they took their stones and they placed their stones in the river. And then all of a sudden it's as if Joshua goes, no, you should be holding one of those stones. But yet you've thrown them down, and Joshua runs over there, and Joshua begins to pick up those 12 stones. Well, the problem is Joshua only has 2 hands and 2 arms. You see, we can't throw our responsibility off anymore and depend on other people to begin to actually do Torah. The time for talking about Torah is over with. People that live in this day and age, the people that I minister to in Costa Rica, they're not interested in what I can tell them, what I can teach them, what I can preach to them. They're interested in what I can do for them. What can I show them? They're interested in my actions. See, this is the weightier matters of Torah. And it's time that the Joshuas out there hold up their stone and stop holding up everybody else's stones. Because after a while you get tired. After a while you either have to drop the stones or the stones cause you to fall over and fall down. And that's what's happening in the movement. That's where we're at in the movement. The burden of the weight can no longer be held by just a few people who are trying to promote unity, who are trying to be the light and salt in the earth, in the world. And so here's another thought, and I'm going to read this, that my friend pointed out, and I think this is so awesome. And I've seen this manifest in our ministry so much, in the area of giving. But my friend says, I believe we've completely lost trust in one another and God. We want to control everything ourselves. We don't give. Listen to this. If this applies to you, listen to it. We don't give because we don't trust others to do as we want them to do with the gift. Let me read that again. We don't give because we don't trust others to do what we want them to do with the gift. We don't encourage because we're okay with judging and deciding that others have reaped what they've sown. Man, that will preach right there. See, this isn't weightier matter of Torah when we have this attitude. We're not acting like Yeshua when we have this type of attitude. So it brings me to my fourth point. And the fourth point in the other video was that people have been so quick to shame others instead of honoring others. We've been so quick because of our actions to shame Yahweh and not bring honor to Him. See, this is what the whole commandment about taking His name in vain is all about. It has nothing to do with the way we pronounce His name, and everything to do with our character lining up with His character. It's time for us in the shame game, is what I refer to it. What is the shame game? Well, the shame game is what I refer to as verse volleyball. We're all familiar with volleyball, right? So what's the object in volleyball? It's to score points, beat your opponent. But you want to spike the ball down somebody's throat in volleyball. We do the same thing in our movement. We play verse volleyball, where you spike a verse on me, and then I in return send it back, and then boom, I spike another verse back on you. This is the shame game. This is verse volleyball, and we need to bring it to an end. We need to stop representing the character of Yahweh falsely within our movement, and stop representing His character falsely to those outside the movement. It's time to stop with all the infighting and the fighting and the arguing, and basically we can no longer major on the minors. Because if we continue doing that, I'm not trying to knock Christianity, but we're going to have the same effect as the Christian church is having right now. They're busted up into so many fragments. There's thousands and thousands of different denominations. Well, that's where we're at in the Hebrew Roots movement. We've got to begin to make some changes if we're going to affect the world in which we live in and the people around us. So, what's the solution about the shame that's so prevalent in our movement? The solution is we have to, as individuals, begin to work on our character flaws and straighten our character flaws up so that we can truly represent the character of Yahweh to a lost and dying world and hurting people. And when we can do this, then and only then is when we bring honor to the name of Yahweh and He gets glory, and our King is portrayed as the King of the universe, who is righteous, who is just, who gives mercy, who is faithful, who is loyal. See, Yahweh's character should be reflected in our character. And when we're doing things that shames others, we in return are shaming Yahweh and representing His character falsely, thus breaking the commandment of taking His name in vain. So the fifth and final point that I brought out, and this is something that is just plaguing our movement, is the focus on end times. And the world is going to end tomorrow, so I have to go to Israel, to be safe, or I have to go to this Middle Eastern country to be safe, or this Southern America, wherever. I have to go to run and hide to this place in order to be safe. That was the fifth point in the other video that I made that's causing us to become irrelevant. The solution in this point is for us to stop convincing others of our beliefs. In other words, like a friend of mine said, and I've written several articles about this on my website, we need to stop making converts and start making disciples. Our movement is full of converts. This is another reason why we have so many problems in our movement. People have been converted to the religion of Hebrew roots, or the religion of Messianic movement, or whatever you want to call it. And people aren't disciples. We're full of converts. What's the issue with a convert? A convert isn't a full, mature believer, isn't a doer of the word, is just a hearer only. So the solution is begin to make disciples. And we don't do that. I'm not against teaching the Torah portions or whatever in our fellowships, but we don't make disciples because we, have a weekly meeting. We make disciples by linking arms with someone and walking with them, getting to know them, getting to know their flaws, getting to know their errors, getting to know their mistakes, getting to know them on a personal level so that we can have a relationship that bridges us together and that we truly walk with one another and we love one another. And I take the Yeshua that's within me and I pour Him into you, and you vice versa with me. That's how we make disciples. We need to stop trying to convince others to believe how we believe. It's time for us to be the salt and light within the earth that we've been called, that we've been commanded to be. See, the solution to this point of everyone, or the hysteria of the heavens are going to fall on us tomorrow, is not isolation. The solution is integration and participation. That's the solution. You see, because there's so much darkness, there's so much negativity going on in the world, the only way we're going to combat that is that we show them Tov. We show them the good. And what is Tov? It's functioning in your purpose. Being in the place where Yahweh has called you to be, doing the thing that He has called you to do. That's Tov. See, there's so much darkness and negativity that's been portrayed in the world that when you show up and you begin to shed your light, that's the only thing that can dispel the darkness. And you can't do that hiding out in your cave with your wheat, water, and guns. I'm not against those things. But we can't be a light putting it under a bushel, like the scripture says, putting it under a container. See, we have to show them the true. We have to show them the correct, because there's this false hope, there's this false image that's being portrayed around the world, and the only way that we can come against that is that we show them the truth. So when the system and when the world, when everything does collapse, which eventually it will, then people, as they're running out of the building that's on fire, they're running out of this mess, they have the truth, they have something to run to. But if we're over in a corner or we're isolated over somewhere else, we can't give them that truth. We can't give them a place to run to. My friend gave this example to this point, that it's like a plant. That if we don't keep making, we take a plant and put it over here and we put it in this pot. And if we don't continue to make the pot bigger and add more nutrient-rich soil to the pot, then that plant can no longer grow. Why? Because it isn't being nourished. It's been cut off, if you will, from the things that actually can bring the nourishment to it. And that plant has nowhere to extend its roots. And this is where many people who are isolating themselves instead of integrating and participating, their roots have only gone so deep to a certain point, and their roots can no longer extend out and get further down in the soil, making them stronger and being able for them to produce the full fruit that they've been called to produce. So I'm sure people are going to find fault with this video because I didn't offer the solution that, that they would think, and that's fine. You guys can comment your solutions, not a problem. But these are some of the solutions that I think if we begin to apply these things, we can actually see some really good come out of our movement. But again, like I stated in the first video, unfortunately, the movement that we're a part of has become irrelevant. Whether you agree with it or not, I'm in the trenches. I've been doing ministry for 11 years. I talk to people, Christians, heathens, Hebrew roots believers, and the comment I receive over and over and over from all of these people is, you guys are religious. There's no different no difference in you guys than some of these other religious people. It's all religion. And unfortunately, it's the truth. Our movement has become religious. I know that's probably going to make people mad, but not to try to be mean, but you can like it, lump it, bump it, or jump it. The truth is the truth. So hopefully these solutions will help you, and hopefully that we can begin to do these things and actually turn this movement around and make it back relevant again and restore it to where Yahweh wanted us to go with this in the beginning. Shalom. Joel Sanchez signing off.